I know. I've been promising a new video for ages, but I keep putting it off because I've kind of been struggling with the format and the content I want to portray. And I've finally decided on the direction I want the videos to go. Basically, subject which combines both my knowledge, experience and passion. So today I'm starting on the new video with a new format. Now you will notice I'm not in northern New South Wales at the moment. I'm actually in the foothills of the Indian Himalayas in midsummer, so it is Australian outback hot here at the moment, so forgive me if I start sweating, but it's just the only break in my study on the course I'm doing over here to get some videoing done. Also, if you hang around for the end of the video, I've got some footage of cooling off in the Ganges yesterday with a good friend of mine, Charlie, who some of you will remember from coming to my clinic, where he helped us out for a while when we were between managerial and reception staff. So, and you'll get a chance to see some of the luminous, ethereal, saffron-soaked city of Rishikesh and the foothills of the Indian Himalayas at the end of the video. I'm just crossing a very dry riverbed now, which isn't actually the Ganges, but it's one of the rivers which feeds into the top of the Ganges. So the new format I've decided on comes in three parts. Part one is discussion of my central hypothesis. Part two is discussion of two scientific studies which corroborate that hypothesis. And part three is some video of how I'm living my life in concordance with that hypothesis. So let's start with the what, then we'll do the why and the how. You'll also notice that I'm now incorporating some very rudimentary drawings done by myself with a few colouring pencils to portray some of the more difficult scientific concepts together with, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but I am, with some AI generated short video clips that I've kind of been involved in making to try and portray some of the more quantum physics parts of my hypothesis, because it's very hard to explain in words, much easier to show in images. You'll also notice it's quite a departure from my usual videos, because I realized since I've been in India, and in fact before that, because one of the reasons I've come to study in India is that since I first started medical school in 1982, I've studied just about everything there is to know about the human body, including down to quantum physics of the mitochondria and the proton motive force, which is one of the things we're going to be talking about today. And I realized that our 1 quadrillion mitochondria are not only communicating with themselves, they're communicating with other people, they're also communicating with the external world. And that's the pathway, that's the doorway I really want to open and explore. Have a look at how the quantum physics of our mitochondria and their ability to communicate through vibration and light with biophotons and electromagnetic frequencies with the external world, and go through that door, have a look not just internally but also externally. And hopefully you'll be interested to come on that journey with me. Come through that door, have a look what's on the other side. Okay, let's get started. So first of all, what's my hypothesis? My hypothesis is that the 3 billion year old proton motive force, which we're talking about today, and the 1.5 billion year old electron flow in the mitochondria, which both use quantum physics to function properly, are either explained by the world's greatest random accident at the bottom of the ocean 3 billion years ago, or the proof or suggestion of a creative intelligence which designed that system, which has not been improved on in 3 billion years and is used by every single living organism on the planet, including bacteria, fungi, plants, and eukaryote organisms like us. And why do I want to talk about it? Because it's the key to communication. Communication internally and communication between us. Communication with the outside world. And it's involved in health, it's involved in prevention of illness, and the how. The how is understanding how our mitochondria align themselves with the laws of nature and expanding our consciousness. And I'll also make the case that science is actually causing a convergence of scientific information and spirituality rather than a divergence. Just have a look. I'll tell you what to have a look at. Have a look that there's no monkeys around, and that's because it's too hot. Even the monkeys are smart enough to get out of this heat. But for example of convergence rather than divergence, have a look at these two quotes from a recent scientific paper on sound and health, and I'll reference that article as usual at the end of the video. Here we go. All right, let's get into it. Let's start off with the 3 billion year old proton motive force, which involves a single membrane, which in the mitochondria is the inner mitochondrial membrane, and in a bacteria is the cell membrane, which we'll talk about in a minute. It involves a membrane, 2 directions, and 3 energies. Let's have a look at it. It involves electrons being passed along a membrane. Remember, all electricity is electrons being passed along a wire. So you've got 2 directions, electrons being passed along a membrane, and as they do so, you've got protons. Remember, proton is half of a single atom. An atom is a proton being buzzed by an electron, so you've got being protons going across the membrane, electrons go along it, push protons across the membrane, and the proton builds up in so much pressure that it bursts back through the membrane, spinning ATPase, which is a mechanical energy as the dam bursts. And then that turns ADP into ATP, which is a chemical energy. But wait, across the bridge, wait, that's not where the revelation comes from. That's not where the epiphany comes from. That's not where the ontological shock comes from. It's not where the existential revelation comes from. Where does that come from? That comes from when you realize that none of that happens. None of that 3 billion year old system of energy production happens without quantum physics. And there's at least 2 quantum physics phenomenon that are working here. One is quantum tunneling, second is quantum coherence, and quite possibly there's some quantum entanglement happening as well. So, what's quantum tunneling? Quantum tunneling is where subatomic electrons act like waves and pass through high energy barriers. It's a lot easier to show you than describe it, so here's a video I made for you. What about quantum entanglement? Quantum entanglement is where two particles, or people, become so deeply interconnected that a physical state in one of them changes the physical state in the other almost instantly, no matter their distance apart. Think about that one for a while, and that may happen in the 3 billion year old proton motive force. Again, it's a tricky one to explain, so I've made another video for you right here. It's those flocks of birds we've all seen which change direction simultaneously, like it's all pre-planned. Okay, so I obviously didn't get a chance to finish the video yesterday, so I came out this morning to finish it off, but there was a few big trucks on the road making a lot of noise, and there was a lot of loud explosions which do go on every morning. So actually asked a few people what the big explosions were about, and that's just the local villagers and farmers scaring away the tigers and might have come down from higher up in the hills overnight. So I'm like, okay, so I'd go ahead with the explosions, I'm okay with that. And I did want to say, the question is, how important is the information that I was giving yesterday? Well, this is how to remember how important it is. It's the rule of 3 of survival. So as most of you are aware, roughly, just roughly, we can survive 3 weeks without food in the wilderness. We can survive won't be long before this is just torrential water. So we can survive 3 weeks without food in the wilderness. We can survive 3 days without water, 3 minutes without breathing. But how long can you survive without electrons flying along your inner mitochondrial membrane? Well, the answer is 3 seconds. And how do we know that? Well, unfortunately we know that because that's how cyanide gas works. Cyanide gas works by stopping the electron flow through the inner mitochondrial membrane. So that's how important. When people ask me how important is this stuff you keep telling us about, I say it's 3 seconds important. Okay, so now I want to continue on, and I want to give you some scientific research and then a practical take-home message that I use. Remember, none of this is medical advice. It's just some strange dude wandering in the Indian Himalayas trying to work out how a tornado can go through a junkyard and assemble a 747 jet plane or not. So the study I want to talk about is called light harvesting chlorophyll pigments, and I'll put the reference at the end of the video as usual. And what it discusses is, we know that plants have had a 1.5 billion year old ability to turn sunlight into energy. It takes sunlight, water and carbon dioxide and turns them into glucose, which it then puts through its mitochondria to produce energy. And of course, it's always been thought that animals, particularly us, are not able to make energy out of sunlight up until this research. And this research found that if you had 2 things, if you have sunlight and you have chlorophyll, but not just chlorophyll, a metabolite of chlorophyll called pyrophosphorbide 9, if you have sunlight and pyrophosphorbide 9 in your tissues, then not only are you able to create more energy, you're also able to, what they think is probably extend our lifespan, because research that was done in the worms they use for testing for lifespan found that the worms who are exposed to sunlight and pyrophosphorbide 9 lived on average 17% longer than those who weren't exposed to it. And up until then, really the only proven way of extending lifespan has been through fasting. So if research continues, might be a good way of not only producing more energy, but also extending our lifespan. So how does it work? Well, if you've got both sunlight and the chlorophyll metabolite, what happens is you improve the efficiency of the reduced form of coenzyme Q10 moving electrons along the inner mitochondrial membrane, and we'll talk about that next week, but that's shuttling electrons from respiratory complex 1 and 2 through to respiratory complex 3. So it improves that process of electron shuttling in the inner mitochondrial membrane to produce more ATP by the proton motive force, as we now know, spinning ATPase like a hydroelectric dam to make chemical energy. And remember, you have to have both. You don't get the benefit of the longevity, you don't get the benefit of the increased ATP production with sunlight alone or with the chlorophyll metabolite alone. You have to have sunlight and the chlorophyll metabolite to get the benefit. Okay, so sunlight, critical for our mitochondria. Chlorophyll, critical for the mitochondria. How do I make use of that? Well, I make sure I get sunlight and I minimize my exposure to blue light, but I'm also very careful never to get burnt. So how do I do that? Well, a couple of ways. One, the research has been adamant that vitamin B3 niacinamide version, not the flushing version of niacin, decreases the risk of skin damage, including non-melanoma skin cancer with exposure to the sun. I never get burnt. I always apply protective oils to my skin, aloe vera after exposure to sunlight. And here's what I really love. Science has shown that lycopene from red plants foods is very protective to the skin from the sun, which I think is just crazy because it's the red summer fruits and vegetables, the tomatoes, the red dragon fruit, the watermelon, the pink grapefruits, they're my favorites. It's the plants which are red, which grow in summer, which protect us from skin damage that we might get if our skin gets too red. I just love the irony of that. All right, that's enough for me because it's incredibly hot out here. Monsoon coming soon, but not yet. Namaste. Oh, and if you like the video, make sure you like it, maybe share it. Subscribing helps. Otherwise this information, and I think it's critical information personally, gets lost in the ocean of YouTube. So thanks very much. I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching. Bye.